The politician closed the file. "This could ruin me," he said. He walked over to the window and punched the glass. "I want my millions." The glass began to crack and then the politician threw the rare rock at the window. It cracked some more. "How my work on the senator," he laughed. The dark man runned across the hallway and backed the politicians off. "This could ruin you," he said. The politicians ran for their lives as the dark man slowly walked forward back into his chair on the Oval Office desk. He tied up the desk and smacked the money in thousands in the air. The U.S. government kept more experience running secret military operations than it did in the actual military. In the service of covert and clandestine intelligence, HQ, during the Cold War they had graduates from some of the top U.S. universities, Johns Hopkins, University of Michigan and Harvard. Ask 5 people in your life and you would get 6 different answers. Mr. Corrigan's basement office was dark and gloomy, maybe that's how he liked it. He sat on the cold wooden and peeling desk, alone in the room with just his bald head and his shades. They shimmered as he flipped the switch on the desk lamp. He picked up the phone and made a call. "Corrigan's office speaking," he said into the phone. "Can I speak to Robert Alexander?" said a deep voice. Mr. Corrigan hung up the phone and looked around the room for some clues. He could hear 2 people talking in the background. "What's up, Shorty?" It was Ely Jones. Mr. Corrigan listened to Ely's stories about going through NSA training with some of the current NSA directors. "I can't believe they left me as the president of Potomac Control," said Ely. "But then again, this was the dullest days." Mr. Corrigan chuckled. Ely was a braggart and a pain in the butt. He flaunted his experiences with the White House. Mr. Corrigan did not care to listen to his stories. "I don't believe it," he said. "I'm thinking we should go down there and have a look," said Mr. Corrigan. "The National Security Agency does not typically discuss operations outside their normal channels." "Maybe you are right," Mr. Corrigan said. "I'll see you tomorrow." He hung up the phone. "I knew it," said a voice from the other end of the phone line. "Someone is sneaking around," thought Mr. Corrigan. "That loser Raul Torres better not ruin my bet on the game." Mr. Corrigan hung up the phone. Hanging up the phone did not make it disappear, as the agents of the NSA, quite likely if on this day, had the skills and tools to make their voice and movements undetectable, as well as to move throughout the nation unnoticed and undercover. In the meantime, the agents of the NSA called in a bomb expert to deal with Mr. Corrigan's office. In the meantime, it had started snowing heavily outside and the agents told Mr. Corrigan it would take them a couple of hours to deactivate the bomb. Mr. Corrigan went back to the work he was doing on his desk. The light from his desk lamp made the office seem more gloomy and gloomier by the second. He tapped away on the keyboard for a while on a planning document for the upcoming NASA satellite launch. It was much more quiet outside his office door. Even when Mr. Corrigan reached for the doorknob and left his office, he could hear the 2 people making phone calls in the hallway. Mr. Corrigan held his breath to help quiet the office. He was confident that the NSA could handle the situation, and even if it did not, it was only a few minutes until he left the building and headed to the game. The bomb expert arrived and told Mr. Corrigan that the bomb was deactivated. Mr. Corrigan got in his van and drove to the Nationals Park. He pulled up next to his friend at the parking lot. "Hey Michael," he said as he approached his friend's car. Mr. Corrigan threw his stuff into the back seat and climbed into the car. They both reached for the phones. He was staring at the wooden game board when he heard the flatulence coming from Michael on the other end of the line. Mr. Corrigan's face turned crimson as he tried to stifle a laugh and keep up an annoyed glare. He failed miserably. The 2 of them were laughing too hard to say anything, and they drove out of the parking lot before Mr. Corrigan had time to voice his thoughts. The 2 pulled up to Ely's house in Chevy Chase and quickly got out of the car. They left their masks on and walked into Ely's house. The agents watched through their binoculars as the 3 walked in the house and sat on the couch. Ely and his 2 companions hung up their masks and took off their clothes. Ely put a chair in front of the door and locked it. The 3 sat naked and rubbed suntan lotion on their bodies. After a few minutes of rubbing their bodies, they smiled and exchanged words. "Fuck this," he said. Before he even had a chance to say anything, the killer flipped over the woman's body that had been behind the couch and ripped her throat open with their huge meaty fist. They popped it open like a can of beer. The killer got up and pulled down his mask, revealing a man with long blonde hair and a massive left fist. "She is a beautician, I think," the killer said to his friends. Her face registered shock. He was so lost in her own pain that he didn't notice the maniac attack by the nearest man with a gun. He shot the man in the face and pulled the trigger 3 more times. The man lay on the floor, dead. Chase then ran over the man, his gun in one hand and a beer in the other. The killer cocked the gun and pointed it at the young woman's face. "You come in my house and I kill my wife. I'll kill everyone in this house and then eat all of their shit and piss. I don't give a fuck about your friends." The killer's hand got tighter and tighter on the gun. He began squeezing the trigger. A small stream of blood formed at the man's eye. Then a second stream followed. His nose was mashed in and there was blood gushing from his head. Ely began screaming. His hand came off of the pistol he held and he fainted on the floor. He had thought he would stop the killer in their tracks and save the day. The shock of his failure had caused him to short-circuit. The killer checked the others. Boyd was screaming and gripping his throat and tears were flowing down his cheeks. He was twitching uncontrollably. He has a disease of the head, the killer thought to himself, and he killed Boyd. Not even a dog would hurt him in this condition. The killer squeezed Mr. Brandt's face and smacked his own one. He laughed and gave the picture a stupid smile. "This one is not my favorite." "Not at all." The killer pulled out his knife and walked around the room. Marlon tried to cover his ears. The killer looked at him and smiled with his one good eye. "You're a good dude, man. Don't worry about this one. I'm really looking forward to cutting his balls off and eating his piss for a snack." The killer looked at Marlon. "I'm going to suck his piss too. That should be good." The taste of piss in a killer's mouth should make him want to pee. It makes him crave piss. Piss is the easiest way to taste piss. Nothing tastes as good as piss in my eyes. The killer went into the kitchen and filled a pot with water and threw in Mr. Brandt's hands. He let it boil and turned the stove on. The water would boil at a quick pace. Soon the water would turn into steam and then it would explode from the top. It would be a large explosion, only 10 to 20 feet away from Mr. Brandt's head. The killer grabbed Mr. Brandt's upper arms and threw his body over the pipe. The steam shot out of the pipe and hit Mr. Brandt with a force 10 times more than the pressure of an explosion. Mr. Brandt came in his suit jacket with a shirt and tie still intact, save for the knife wound. The steam burnt him from the eyes all the way to the belly. He was in agony. No one could ever go through this and live to talk about it. Mr. Brandt squirmed in pain and screamed. "It hurts so much it hurts," he screamed. The killer's voice could not be heard. In his mind he was 100 times worse. He went into the living room and brought out his hand knife. He lifted Mr. Brandt by the hair. He sliced the neck of the woman, too, in 3 places. The knife was curved and sharp. He cut the neck in a half circle and then slashed the head off like an axe. There was so much blood that no one would have guessed how much blood was spilled. But this was not true. One part of Mr. Brandt's body was lying in front of the fireplace. The head was tossed in the fireplace as well. The clothes Mr. Brandt was wearing were in the middle of the house. The one piece of clothing was sitting on the couch in the front room. It was off the shoulder and it had a big hole in the chest. In the shirt, it was smeared with blood. It also had a large hole on the neck as well as a couple of teeth marks in it. The blood was all in there and the body could not be traced to that piece of clothing. They would have to talk about this blood-soaked shirt and nobody would believe them. The killer tore her trousers off. He pulled the trousers from the woman and went into the living room. In the pocket, he found a ring with a picture of a smiling man. It had his initials on it. He took the ring and put it in Mr. Brandt's pocket. He laughed to himself and screamed out, "You dirty bastard. You'll go to hell for killing my pregnant girlfriend." He turned to look at Marlon. "Oh yeah, their bodies, right. You can suck your piss." She would have made a tasty snack. Marlon looked stunned as looked at his dead mother.